it's the LeBron versus Zlatan Ibrahimovic. And sorry if I mispronounced that, but Zlatan decided to comment on LeBron's social justice persona and initiatives and say, I quote, LeBron is phenomenal at what he's doing, but I don't like when people have some kind of status. They go and do politics at the same time. Do what you're good at. Do the category you do. I play football because I'm the best at playing football. I don't do politics. If I would be a political politician, I would do politics. That is the first mistake people do when they become famous and they become in a certain status. Stay out of it. Just do what you do best because it doesn't look good. And LeBron responded by saying, and I quote, I would never shut up about things that are wrong. I preach about my people and I preach about equality, social injustice, racism, systematic voter suppression, things that go on in our community. So there's no way I would ever just stick to sports because I understand how this platform is and how powerful my voice is. So that's a lot, but I thought it was a good topic to cover because we do often cover sports, but we don't necessarily cover the things that happen outside of them. And I wanted to touch on this and say that I think that people are so quick to tell athletes essentially to shut up and dribble if what they're talking about is something that they disagree with.
Right.
So I think that a lot of times when we see people saying that they want to keep politics out of sports, it's because the politics that they're referring to are politics that they disagree with. So what are your thoughts on the back and forth between these two athletes?
I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting coming from that message is coming from another athlete because of the fact that LeBron is such a global power. And as far as the soccer world goes, Zlatan is, pretty legendary from what I can see. He's played for teams like Man U, Barcelona, more recently LA Galaxy, which kind of signals he's at the tail end of his career. But he has had a long career. And from the, little research I've done on him, he's probably one of the greatest strikers of all time. He has that kind of status as a forward in the sport of football. And so it's really interesting to hear someone who's as accomplished as him, who's probably had a platform for such a long time as him, come out of his neck and say that about LeBron. And it makes me wonder how much he knows about LeBron and LeBron's history and the things that LeBron is kind of fighting for to be able to have that kind of opinion. He's a Swedish, player. I think he's Swedish born. And so I don't know what politics are like in Sweden. I'm not sure what kind of political issues they have. I'm not sure what their demographics look like, whether it's a very homogenous country or very, mixed and diverse country in terms of the ethnic background of its citizens. But at the end of the day, if you kind of come from majority culture, politics can be something that you kind of watch to the side and can really afford to ignore. And I like the fact that LeBron decided to open up that conversation, especially from his platform, because it's a platform that doesn't really get to see a lot of people of prominent standing like really speak up and say something. When we think about prominent athletes, you obviously think about Muhammad Ali in the past, as well as Jesse Owens, throwing up the black fist at the Berlin Olympics and all those kind of moments. And LeBron comes to my mind as another prominent figure who decided to, against all odds, really speak up and say something when it wasn't really kosher to do so. Started in 2012 with Trayvon Martin and the Miami Heat and them wearing those hoodies and as a political statement, and is kind of just gained momentum and steam. And at the end of the day, he only touches for the most part on things that directly affects him and the community that he tries to support. And he's been a very vocal leader on and off the basketball court for his entire career. So to me, everything that LeBron represents is true to him and his identity. And it's not really, so to me, it's not really him just trying to throw his bone into politics in order to gain like points. It's him trying to actually make a difference and stand up for people that don't always get their voice heard. And what better way to do it than as a global ambassador of a brand in Nike and a bigger brand in the NBA. So that's kind of
No,
my
no,
take
I
on it.
definitely feel you on that. And like you said, it's so much easier to tell someone not to comment on something or to stay out of something when you don't live it.
Mm,
Like from what I know about Zlatan, I don't think he's getting racial slurs painted on the gates outside of his house like LeBron is. You know
mm,
what I'm saying? Like he's not getting some of the criticism about LeBron is about some of the decisions he's made, which aren't necessarily fair because he's free to make those decisions. But a lot of those uh, things that we see with the jersey burning and the vitriol towards him, like some of it is racial. People won't say that, but some of it is racial. And of course, he's going to want to comment on these things because he and many of the people that look like him, including us, it's something that we live with on a day-to-day basis. Even if you're
right.
not directly experiencing racism, because of our cultural identity, we identify with other people that are. We identify with people like a George Floyd or like an Ahmaud Arbery or, you know, Sandra Bland. We identify with these people that we see facing injustices and violence and death because they look like us. So of course we feel things, and when you feel something, I feel like you want to speak on what you're feeling. So I think that that's just what that is. And I think LeBron is very aware of the fact that people look to him as this figure, as a role model, whether he tries to be or not. And if he's going to be that, then maybe some of it is his responsibility to step into that and try to, you know, speak on these issues, because if he speaks on these issues, then people that look up to him or admire him or are his peers are more likely to do so. So it benefits the cause. But I wouldn't expect someone that's outside of that necessarily to see that. And I wanted to touch on something as far
Yeah.
as politics and sports. Uh, I touched on it a little bit earlier as far as people identifying politics that they disagree with and trying to single those out as something that shouldn't be a part of sports. But living in America, people have to realize that politics are completely intertwined with sports in every way. Like people don't understand that patriotism is politics at this juncture in America. So it's like
Mm,
you have an organization like the National Football League that does these large displays of military might or patriotism in regards to the military before games, and people are perfectly fine with that without realizing that that is a political statement, that these showings of the armed forces aren't just to show the armed forces, it's for recruitment, you know. And if it's for recruitment, it's essentially
yeah.
taking a political stance, because recruitment to the army is in many ways a support of certain wars that we happen to be engaging in at that particular point in time. So these politics
Yeah.
that you want so badly out of sports are already in them. They are just politics that you are in agreement with or you are oblivious to because they become such a uh, an ingrained part of the American experience.
Right. Right. That's a great point. I want to correct myself. I said Jesse Owens lifted his fist at the Olympics. That was actually John Carlos in 1968,
Right.
as a salute to Black Power. Forgive me for that. But I completely agree in terms of, the hypocrisy that lies in people saying, shut up and dribble when, political statements have been made about sports and around sports, even at games. You have people maybe not saying having political stances, but shouting racial slurs at players on the court, wilding out. talking, saying a lot of reckless stuff to, 6'5" super athletes that could squash them if they wanted to, but they have to focus on their job.
Mhm.
And who's to say what's fair and what's not fair, but we know what's right and what's not right. So that, the idea that you have to be quiet and not say anything of that sort, is really, to me, just very dismissive of the
Mhm.
complexity of the world. You know what I mean? And life is just not that simple. But I will say that at the end of the day, whatever athlete, decides to put their fist up or take a stance, that they just be educated on what exactly it is that they're talking about and be very knowledgeable on, the different issues that are out there, and to just really be a champion, not just with saying a few kind words here and there, but actually understand what's going on, in the background. I appreciate a guy like LeBron because not only is he, wearing the hoodie, but I know he donates. He's very philanthropic. He has a school that he created where he's giving, college tuition to all the kids that attend it. And he's not
Yeah,
just
and to
talking it,
interject
but
really
he,
quickly, that
yeah,
school doesn't exist if he just sticks to sports. But continue.
yes, exactly. Um, and so he gets this platform, he gets all these resources, and he's giving back to the community. And so whatever athlete decides to, take up a stance, my suggestion, please know what you're talking about and be well informed. And just do your research, take your time before you decide to dabble in it, because you are going to get a lot of hate, and your play has to be able to back it up. And the one thing about LeBron's play is that he backs up everything he's saying. So
Right. I would, and
yeah.
that's a good point, but I would also argue the flip side. I think that if you're going to criticize these athletes, that you educate yourself properly on the issues that they're talking about.
Mm,
You educate yourself on exactly what the details of all of these cases are. You educate yourself on the plight of the Black and brown people of this country, you know? Like, I doubt
yeah.
all of these people that are saying these things about uh, Black athletes and their political stances have never read a book by a Black author,
Mm,
have never read a book or watched a documentary about the Black experience. So it's like, on one hand, and we as people of color, because we are minorities in this country, we're constantly indoctrinated with experiences of the majority and educated by the experiences and the history of the majority. So it's
yeah.
like, we don't get, we are well aware of the other side. We are well aware of what other people that are saying these things about us, where they come from, and where their stances come from, but they are not well educated on where we come from. They've been fed a certain narrative about us and what our struggle is, and they have their own stances on it without fully educating themselves about what that struggle is. So I would,
Yeah.
as well as encouraging athletes to be knowledgeable about their stances, I would also encourage these people to that are criticizing these athletes to be knowledgeable about what these athletes and what people of color are going through.